This
Please go ahead.
conference will now be recorded.
Thank you. I guess we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. And here's the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. And most everybody's doing it now with their, if you're not speaking, please keep your phone off on mute if you can. We were hearing some background during the last half hour. So appreciate it if you're not speaking to, or not speaking to keep your phone, your connection on mute. All right, the first item is the.
Bill, could I expound upon some of the rules for the meeting?
Great, yes, please.
Okay, let me get there. All right, first off, if accessing the meeting electronically and you desire to make a comment, please type your full name and address into the chat box. The chat box can be seen in the upper right. It looks like a speech bubble, usually a white speech bubble. During courtesy of the floor, your name will be read and you will have 3 minutes to make your comments. Time will also be allotted for comments from those who are accessing the meeting by phone only. Speakers, again, will be limited to 3 minutes. At the point that we open it up to phone people, we will announce that, so you can just speak up, give your name, and make your comment. To reiterate, the speaker must identify their name and address prior to making any comments. Otherwise, once again, we're stressing, please mute your microphones to avoid the background noise that may cause interference in the meeting and make it difficult for others to hear. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Greg. We'll start with the approval of minutes. The minutes were published previously. These are the minutes for the June 18, 2020 meeting. Does anybody have any comments on the minutes? Comments or corrections? Greg, I will give you one. Agenda item 5, comprehensive plan update. It talks about a meeting scheduled for Wednesday, June 10th. I think that might have been in the previous minutes because this is minutes for the meeting of June 18th. Okay.
Yeah, you're correct. He may have spoken about just that's when we had the meeting.
Okay, that's fine.
The verbiage does need to be changed, though.
Yeah, that's fine.
There was a meeting.
Yeah, there was a meeting.
Instead of
right.
it.
That
Yes.
works. Okay. Any other comments? Hearing none, can I have a motion to approve?
Motion.
I think I'll go with Brian, Diane to second. Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
I guess, should we do a roll call for?
Yeah, let's do a roll call to establish who is indeed here, and then we'll also take the vote while we're doing it. So, starting at the top, David Dunbar.
Here.
And I.
Aye.
Thank you. Brian Height.
Here and I.
Dan Kelly.
Here and I.
Bill McNair.
I hear.
Vinnie Quinn. He is not here. Alan Tope.
Here, aye.
And David Wilson.
Here, aye.
Motion passes 6-0.
Good. And now the minutes are done and approved. We'll move on to agenda item 3, subdivision review. And this will consist of a staff presentation, an applicant presentation, courtesy of the floor, and a Planning Commission decision. So Greg, we'll start out with staff presentation.
Okay, I'll try to keep this one short. This is an application to develop the properties located at, Huckleberry Road, pin 548746422139, which is the 111-acre parcel zoned TND commercial overlay, or sorry, residential cluster overlay. Huckleberry Road, pin 548767544734, which is 4.7 acres, also zoned TND residential cluster overlay. 2523 Huckleberry Road, which is 1.5 acres, TND residential cluster overlay. 2582 Huckleberry Road, 12.1 acres, TND cluster overlay. 1802 North Cedar Crest, 31.9 acres, R4 and TND residential cluster overlay. Huckleberry Road, pin 5487-2734-3134, which is a 15-acre parcel zoned RR2. Cedar Crest Boulevard, pin 5472-6571-146. Missed the number there. A 13.6 acres parcel zoned rural residential. And Huckleberry Road, pin 5487-2730-3984, which is a 0.4 acre parcel zoned RR. And Cedar Crest Boulevard, pin 5487-2632-3076, which is a 6.6 acre parcel zoned R2. 1926 Cedar Crest Boulevard, which is 2.2 acres zoned R2. And finally, 1928 Cedar Crest Boulevard, which is 0.31 acres zoned R2. The plan proposes a TND residential cluster development on approximately 138 acres, consisting of 68 single dwelling units, 88 age-restricted single dwelling units, 74 two-unit dwelling units, 82 age-restricted two-unit dwelling units, a clubhouse, 308 apartment units in 1128 apartment buildings, 5 condo apartments containing 60 units, 2 3-story and 2 4-story mixed-use buildings containing 27,200 square feet of commercial and restaurant space on the first floor and 100 apartments above, 2 1-story 5,000 square foot commercial restaurant buildings, 1 30,000 square foot medical office and a community clubhouse, approximately 39 acres of open space, of which 13 acres is active open space. The plan also proposes 64 two-unit dwelling units in the R4 portion, 9 single dwelling units in the R2 portion, 9 single dwelling units in the RR portion, and 9 single dwelling units in the RR2 portion. All units are proposed to be served by public water and sewer. K. Walbert LLC and perhaps Janda Land Development are the owners. K. Walbert LLC is the equitable owner and applicant. The Planning Commission previously reviewed this at their May 21st, 2020 meeting and took it under advisement. On November 20th, 2019, the Board of Commissioners approved conditional use number 2017-601 Ridge Farm, subject to the applicant complying to 5 conditions. The recommendation of the Planning Commission is that the department recommends the Planning Commission take the plan under advisement to afford the applicant time necessary to address the reviewing agency's comments, contingent upon the applicant granting the township a waiver from the time frame upon which to act upon the plan. At this point, the Board of Commissioners has to act upon the plan by August 18th, 2020.
Okay, thank you, Greg. The applicant can now present your, is that going to be Jason or?
Jim Preston, I'll be starting. Can you hear me?
Okay, Jim, yes.
Okay, should I go ahead?
Yes, please.
Okay, first of all, good evening and thank you for taking your time. My name is Jim Preston. I'm the attorney for the applicant. I also have Jason Engelhardt. He's with Langen Engineering. He is the project engineer. We also have Rob Hoffman. He's with Traffic Planning and Design. and he will be able to answer questions specific to traffic. I want to thank Mr. Talarita for that comprehensive review of the waivers. Probably going to save Jason some time, but nevertheless, as we know, every property is unique. The property itself is unique. Its situation to the surrounding properties and the surrounding roadway is unique, and that is why every plan that goes through the township, as you're well aware, goes through this process of trying to make the controlling ordinances, the subdivision and land development ordinance in particular, meet and accommodate those unique circumstances. And that's done through the process of waivers, which is why we're here this evening. In fact, if we can limit our discussion to the waivers, which I imagine that's a rather ambitious task in and of itself, we'd like to get some guidance on the waivers so we can continue with the design of the plan, and so that we can create a product that can address some of those unique conditions. And again, with an eye towards efficiency and the public health, safety, and welfare. So I'm not going to take any more of your time. Jason, are you online?
I am, Jim.
Okay, why don't you go ahead, Jason, and take over from here.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, everyone, and thank you, Jim. And thank you, Tony, also for doing, again, making my job a little easier tonight and going through all the waivers. So I'm going to try not to be overly repetitive, but I want to answer your questions, and I want to cover what we need to cover. I just want to mention a couple things about the history. Would it be possible for me to have control of the screen? So
Probably.
okay, it looks like I have it.
Okay.
Okay. So what the plan I'm bringing up is the same one that Tony walked through a bit. So just a little on background. The last time, or the first time we were in front of you with the preliminary plan, was on May 21st at your May 21st meeting. At that meeting, we reviewed a total of 8 waivers that were requested. The first 8 waivers in the letter are the same waivers. We've made some modifications to those based on your comments, but the same general, the same sections, the same order that we presented back then. Since that time, what we did is we went through the many comment letters that we received on our initial submission from Public Safety, Parks and Rec, and your multiple engineers, and as well as listened to your comments and others. We reviewed those documents, went through everything. In those letters, there were some items that suggested waivers would be required in numerous places. In some cases, we figured out a way to make an alteration to the plan to avoid those. The last 4, so the 4 that are after those 8 that make up the 12, those are items that we didn't believe we could make a modification to, or at least we prefer not to make a modification. We think the plan's better as proposed, and we added those to the list. That's how we ended up with 12. But since we last met in May as well, we met with Park and Rec in early June, and then with Public Safety in early July. So that brings us up to the date where we are now. So we had those 2 meetings. We made a resubmission specific to the waivers. And the reason we did that is we've been picking away at addressing some of the comments, but there's some key elements, particularly layout related, that we really need to get your feedback on, and ultimately the board's, so we can then address those items in the plan and continue to move forward. So we're kind of, to some degree, we're stuck until we have that direction. So that's kind of where we stand there. The waivers themselves, I will go through them the way similar to what Tony did on your pre-meeting, which I had the opportunity to listen to, but I will short circuit that a little bit. So I'll jump right into it. The first waiver, and again, Tony did discuss this. This is the separation distance for the proposed right-in, right-out driveway on Walbert from the intersection of Cedar Crest. So a little background on that, and you may recall this. In conditional use, this was included. The original request, we had this intersection a little bit closer to the proposed right-in, right-out driveway, a little closer to Cedar Crest. Based on comments, we pushed it further away, further to the east, to create more stacking space. Comments from the board and from the planning commission. We also better defined or protected people from making a left turn in. We added curbing and lengthened this throat out so that lefts will be more firmly discouraged here. From there, I think I'd like to have Rob Hoffman, our traffic engineer, talk about his exhibit relative to this location. The only thing else I would offer is that the plan itself, we believe, is a better plan with a secondary access point. It'll limit stacking at our main access point and provide better access for the medical office building and the potential restaurants in this location. So with that, I'll stop talking and let Rob jump in on this.
Good evening, everybody. With respect to the driveway, go back here. With respect to the right-in, right-out driveway, yeah, Jason, if you don't mind, zoom in a little bit on it, that would be good. That's a little bit better for now. Okay. Initially, in your pre-meeting, I did hear some of the questions with respect to PennDOT, and I just want to jump back to that for a minute to give you some clarification on that with PennDOT's stance with respect to this driveway. PennDOT has reviewed this access as part of the review of the traffic impact study. The traffic impact study is approved by PennDOT, and what that means, and there's an approval letter issued by PennDOT, and that letter documents the roadway improvements that are going to be constructed and will be permitted by PennDOT. This driveway is an approved access through that traffic study approval by PennDOT. So in essence, what that means is PennDOT is intending to issue a permit for that driveway. They reviewed it. They reviewed the traffic flow associated with it in conjunction with the overall development and felt that that driveway is appropriate and can be safe and efficient from a traffic operations perspective, and their intent is they will issue a permit for that. As Tony had mentioned, they haven't reviewed the HOP plans, which are the actual detailed plans that go into them for the issuance of that permit, but that approval process isn't taking away the improvements. The improvements are already set by virtue of their approval letter from the traffic study, because the traffic study is the vehicle that identifies what infrastructure is necessary to be constructed in conjunction with various developments. So the right-in, right-out from PennDOT's perspective is approved. A permit's not issued because we have to go through the plan process, and what the plan is going to do when we go through the HOP plans, that gets into the specifics and the details of the design, the geometry of the intersection, the width of the lanes, pavement markings, signage, things of that nature. But it's not, it doesn't take away from them approving an access. At this point, given that we've gone through that process with them and gotten the approval letter, in their minds, their intent is to issue a permit for that driveway. So I just wanted to kind of clear the air on that to some degree, because I know there was some question with respect to that. As far as the operation.
Excuse me.
Yes.
So is this drawing what's going to be part of the HOP? Like
yes, I mean, in essence, it is. This is an exhibit for tonight's presentation, but as far as it's a different scale of drawing. But yes, this is the layout that would be done in conjunction with the HOP plan. There'd be more detail on it, obviously, because this is a presentation exhibit for purposes of our meeting tonight. But yes, that is the design.
Well, you might want to look at that center lane and having turn access from that center lane like that to a place where you can't make a left before you see where I mean, just south
yes.
of the access.
The two-way center pattern. Yeah,
yeah.
That was initially discussed. PennDOT reviewed the concept plans of this when it was sent in. That was initially discussed. So that was the initial feedback. But to your point, yes, I mean, those are the kind of things and details when it goes into PennDOT that they'll look at and they'll weigh. They may decide that, you know what, we don't want the pattern there. We'll do gore striping or however they want to handle it. but those are the kind of details that get hammered out as we go through that process.
Okay, thank you.
Sure, you're welcome. So with respect to that, there are some dimensions on the bottom of that sketch that you can see. And what I wanted to point out, because I know at past meetings, I heard some concerns as far as operationally, how does it work for somebody that wants to leave that driveway, and if they want to head south on Cedar Crest, how is that going to work? So what happens is you can see the movement out of that driveway is a stop controlled movement. So those people stop, and then they would enter a single westbound lane on Walbert Avenue, and they continue. You see about 220 feet before they would get to what is the opening for the left turn lane to make the left head south on Cedar Crest Boulevard. So it's not like it's not an instant weave, or it's not that they're crossing multiple lanes. And I think I know that was a concern I heard at past meetings, that, you know, are they gonna have to come out and cross multiple lanes to get to that ultimate destination to make that southbound movement? And that's not at all the case. You can see, like, you know, like any other intersection, they're at a stop control, they come out into their lane and they progress, and then when they get to the intersection where the turn lane is, then they move over to the left to enter into that turn lane, you know, to get down. And again, the lanes that are there, that the 360-foot lane, that design is all based on what the maximum queues are anticipated with once all these improvements go in place, again, which is all vetted out through the traffic study, and that traffic analysis determined that it's actually less than 360 feet, but that's what the lane's designed as, is 360 feet would be the queue for that, the maximum queue, the worst case queue that we're anticipating for that left turn movement. And then as far as the, you know, touching on the need for that access, from a traffic management perspective, it helps to dilute the traffic and have multiple means of ingress and egress, particularly a development like this with the types of uses that we have, where we have a residential component and we've got a commercial component. Obviously, this right in, right out comes in to the area that's what I'm calling the commercial component. Obviously, there's the apartment uses in there as well, but it allows for some of that traffic movement to kind of funnel in directly to their destination, rather than have to traverse through the site, which is the case if this access was not here and everyone had to use the full access driveway further to the east. Then you create, you know, what I'm going to say are unnecessary conflicts between vehicles and pedestrians, as you have to, the traffic that's destined for this corner, for this core commercial area, they'd have to traverse through those parking areas with that traffic, both vehicular and pedestrian. You know, again, conflicts that I don't think are necessary to have, and certainly could create the potential for some safety concerns there. So that's really what's driving this. And again, you know, as part of the whole traffic flow scheme, that's something that PennDOT looks at when they're approving this, and how people are getting into and out of the sites and how that traffic's being managed. And again, they've looked at this and do feel that this is an appropriate access.
When do you think the process will, the permit process will occur?
So the plans, we're currently developing the plans, and I anticipate those plans will probably be submitted to PennDOT in the next 2 to 3 weeks. The plans should go in. Now, you know, you're all aware this is a very large project. There's a very large set of infrastructure, roadway improvements that are going in. So it's going to be a lengthy process, because there's a lot of back and forth dialogue with PennDOT as we go through that process. So there'll be multiple reviews where they're going to review it. They're going to feed comments back to us. We're gonna have to address their comments, and similarly, the township engineers copied on all of those submissions, and they're, you know, they can opine as well on what they're seeing, and if there's anything that they'd like to see done, they have the opportunity to provide that feedback to PennDOT for consideration. And you know, it'll go through a project like this. It will probably go through 3 to 4 review cycles with PennDOT. And you know, from a timing perspective, that it's probably a 9-month process to get through that. With PennDOT to get to the final permit issuance.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Quick question for you. On your sketch, you indicate a distance of 360 plus 220 for 80. Yet in your paper letter, you say it's 680 from Cedar Crest, which is correct.
In which, I'm sorry, which letter you were referencing?
Your letter revised June 20th, waiver request number 1 down at the bottom in the last paragraph. It says approximately 680 feet from the Walbert Avenue Crest intersection, and yet 360 plus 220 is 580. So there's a 100-foot difference in there, which is right.
Yeah, I think the difference is in how the measurement is made, and Jason, you'll correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it's the measurement for purposes of the waiver is a center line to center line measurement.
Okay.
Right. That's the ordinance requires a center line and center line separation distance, and Rob is just illustrating the length of the lanes. So.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Rob, the only question I have, I understand PennDOT's gonna review it in great detail. Only question I have is the Atlanta bus stop. Has there been any additional coordination with that since the last meeting?
I have not done that on my end. Jason, have you, before I expand upon that, have you had any additional coordination since the last meeting, Jason?
Well, no, I tasked one of the engineers in the office with doing that, but I don't have any firm feedback from Atlanta yet.
Are you putting 1,000 homes there?
And okay, so, and yes, obviously as we move through the process with PennDOT, that'll be one of the boxes, so to speak, that we're going to have to check is to show that we've had some coordination with them. So that will progress as we go through this process with them, over the course of the next 9 months.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Okay, any further questions on this particular access before I move on?
I just have one question on how many feet is this entrance from the Office Center Road?
I do not have that in front of me, so unfortunately I can't give you a definitive answer on that right now.
I'm just looking at the waiver request letter. It's roughly 500 feet from Office Center Drive.
And what is the required saldo from that distance there?
The separation distance is the required on an arterial is 800.
From both intersections?
Because this is a right in, right out. I mean that the requirement is 800 feet.
That's correct. It's 800 feet because of the arterial designation of the road. So it'll be 800 from each.
From each. So it's deficient from Cedar Crest as well as deficient from. Can you move this over, or are we allowed to see the following intersection there? We can get a full picture of what we're looking at.
Sure, of course.
Thank you.
Just take a minute to regenerate here. Put over a bit. So Office Center will be a signalized intersection.
So it basically pretty close splits the difference between the two, provides better access to those commercial buildings right there in the middle, it looks like.
That's correct. Better circulation. You've got about 1,450 feet total from the Office Center down to Cedar Crest. And the location was chosen again. Originally it was a little closer to Cedar Crest, but there was a request to move it further east, which ultimately made sense with the traffic analysis that Rob did.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to move on if that's okay. As Tony described, items, our waivers 2 and 3 go together. We discussed those when I was here in May as well. They concern the length of, get it to regenerate here, the length of this cul-de-sac and the number of units associated with that. At one point early on, when we presented early sketches, we had a connection out to Valley Forge Road, as was mentioned, and it goes back a few years now. There was a suggestion we probably shouldn't make that connection through. At the last meeting, we discussed that public safety had asked for an emergency access. I met with public safety recently, and they had asked me to look at whether or not an emergency access could be provided between the north and the south cul-de-sac, which would avoid any connection through to Valley Forge Road. And I think Tony had briefly brought up that exhibit that I shared. So there is some grade challenges here between these two cul-de-sac bulbs, but we did look at it enough today to know that we can make it work. It involves a few adjustments and probably adjusting the bulb grades a bit. But we feel comfortable we can make it work, whether it's through a direct connection the way I'm showing here, or a separate emergency access connection that would run through the center open space area. But would still not have more than 400 feet of bulb length. So generally, when you have a cul-de-sac longer, the reason why that section is usually in place is concerning if you had a fire and it would block off access. So by having the emergency access provided between the connection provided, that usually addresses that issue. So I would think that we would look to try to incorporate Exhibit A, the access I'm showing now, but that's the intent, to address that concern.
Could you, as for emergency access, why could that not be just a continuation of the road to connect them?
We wouldn't meet, there would be a number of standards, for example, like the roadway radius. We'd probably be a little higher in grade than you would want on a permanent road. But for an emergency access, I think we can satisfy what they'll need for emergency access. But as a permanent condition, I think it would be challenging to meet those requirements.
Okay.
I think it would be too tight. You wouldn't want regular usage of this connection point. But when the once or twice, I don't know how often it would get used, but probably very infrequently, I think would be fine.
Okay.
I mean, it would be paved. It would be 20 foot wide, and we would address whatever comments public safety had on providing it.
What's the difference in elevation between the two cul-de-sac bulbs?
Now it's on the order of 50 feet. We'll probably have to adjust it to reduce that difference to about 40 to make that work, whether we went with this approach or we went with this approach lengthens the drive, so it gives us a little more length to catch the grade.
Mm-hmm.
So
thank you.
Would that emergency access meet our turn templates for our fire equipment? Worst case scenario, it's catastrophic there, something's happening and we have to get a fire truck on that. Would it support that?
yes, it'll have to. Yeah, they won't approve that without it. So I'll have to show them templates. It'll have to structurally support it. It'll be paved as well. So I would think most of the time it would get used as a bike path or a walkway, you know, and it would be protected on either side from normal residents using it, but or you know, or the kids will use it, but you know, it'll function for a fire truck.
Well, it just seems to me that if it can function for one of our $1 million fire trucks, well, they're not all $1 million, but some of them, that it could also support regular car use. Just my opinion as a regular road.
Yeah, I can appreciate that. Again, the challenge is the width and the radius, and then providing the right of way width, and then posting speed limit on it. All those things come with a different level of review than something that would be an emergency access that could certainly support a fire truck and they can use it in an emergency, but you wouldn't want to use on a regular basis. But I understand your point. I do.
Thank you.
I had that same question. Since it's a dual waiver, we're looking at the number of houses that are allowed by ordinance is 15, and we're going to 26, and then the length of the road from 400 feet to 1,140 feet. So those are pretty substantial waivers. And if there's a way to configure this to connect those roads, just as Brian and Bill was saying, certainly that seems like a way to configure this to take care of the safety issue as well as satisfy the SALDO requirements.
And it also would make snow removal easier. Cul-de-sacs are not a public works employee's favorite thing to plow, so.
Understood. You know, again, it would, if we were to try to propose that, it would involve a number of other pieces of relief we would have to ask for to try to make that work here. So I don't think that's the most safe condition for a permanent access way through, which is, you know, again, originally it was proposed through this access easement connection to Valley Forge Road, and we were trying to avoid that condition.
And what was the issue with joining to Valley Forge Road?
Well, initially there was hesitation that the folks from this development didn't want the connection through.
Has
So,
the feasibility of the grading been investigated to connect to Valley Forge?
There's a decent amount of grading through here. So there's a kind of a gully, I'll describe it as through here, but that would be filled as part of this. So we think that the emergency access between the two bulbs makes more sense and avoids any connection with the adjoining development at this point. So and again, there would be a number of grading challenges for a full access through here. I don't think I could accomplish that, but I feel comfortable I can accomplish an emergency access that I can get, that public safety will be comfortable with. That will get a fire truck there in an emergency.
Okay.
Was there consideration of just having an emergency pathway out to that other road, having that be only emergency?
Out to Valley Forge.
Out to Valley Forge Road.
There was, and public safety suggested that either option would be okay. In this case, we're trying to avoid cutting through an existing yards here.
Okay.
But there is an existing easement there, correct? Off of Valley Forge?
Yes, there is an existing easement there, yes. But I think this connection would solve both by providing that emergency access without impacting the adjacent property.
But if there was an emergency access from Valley Forge over to your development, that would be a great path for kids to use on their bikes, just like you suggested they would use the emergency access, you know, for as a trail or whatever. It'd be another pedestrian access point as well.
And we could certainly add a pedestrian access point to the property line without having to disrupt anything on the adjoiner's property that hasn't been disrupted in the past.
And what
So
grade?
we could.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead and ask your question.
Okay, I thought you're finished.
I am.
I was asking the access route that you have on the screen right now. What grade of road are you anticipating that would be?
If we went this route between the two cul-de-sacs, the emergency access would be on the order of 10%.
And what about the other road, the other configuration?
We probably could get that down to around 8. But again, it's an emergency access, so I've done emergency accesses at 15% because the idea is it only gets used if there's a catastrophic condition, other than whatever else it might be used for a walking trail or for whatever other use that might be functional.
So there could also potentially be a 6% grade there to make it a township road.
It would be very difficult to get it down to 6%, or I think you're allowed 7% on a local street. Again, it would involve, providing the right of way through here would be really difficult to do, and providing the radiuses that met the standards for a permanent road, 25-mile-an-hour road would be really difficult to accomplish. I don't know that we could.
If there's less residential density, would that permit more space and more room to provide an adequate township road? Because right now, my understanding is there's more houses proposed than allowed by Saldo.
Well, just on the length of cul-de-sac, because the very original plan had the connection through the Valley Forge. But it's not a density issue. It's a grade issue. There's a great deal of grade across, from the lower bulb to the upper bulb.
So to piggyback on that question, Dave, if the waiver was not approved to allow the 26 units on that road, and you were to stick to the 15 that our Saldo allows on a cul-de-sac, so would that then free up an ability to connect those roads in some way?
If you didn't allow the waiver, I guess we would probably initially look at seeing if we can make a for permanent connection to Valley Forge Road, which there was resistance to originally, or an alternate. We would have to look at if there's anything other alternate way to approach.
What about bringing that, I can't see what road number that is in the middle there, to connect that to those, I'm sorry, I can't read it.
To Road I here?
Yes.
Let me go to the bigger
Have that
plan.
connect both of those.
Bear with me for 1 second. Okay, so you're saying this road?
Right, if that were to connect to both of those, road H and J. To make an intersection across there.
Again, you have the same grade. The reason why this is as long as it is and routed the way it is to catch grade. So you need this length of road to address the grade condition.
And what grade is that road?
I don't recall exactly, but it meets the ordinance. I don't know if it was 6%, 7%, but it wasn't more than 7%, which is what's permitted. So should I move on to the next one?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, thank you. So that was 2 and 3. Number 4 was the grading waiver. So there was an exhibit that Tony didn't get an opportunity to present. So let's see if I can make this a little smaller. Difficult with. Go full screen. Okay, so there's a grading waiver requested. So there's an area of open space that had been discussed before. The ordinance talks about a 3-to-1 slope. We're requesting allowance to let us grade this at a 2-to-1 slope. It's about 2 acres of area total. The geotechnical engineer had asked me to identify the area closer and to provide some cross sections, which I did. The existing grade in this area is roughly 2-to-1. So if you drove out there today, depending on where you were on the slope, it varies a bit, but you can see in this section, it's roughly 2-to-1, which is through here. So, you know, this is a situation. It's not an uncommon condition to grade at 2-to-1. You know, there's a certain type of slope matting you need to provide. Your engineers may ask me to do some sort of a stability analysis to confirm it will be stable. The open space will be planted in a way that won't require a great deal of maintenance, because you won't, whether it's a 3-to-1 or a 2-to-1, you won't be able to you're not going to put a lawnmower on it. You know, that's not what it'll be planted with something that'll stay in place that requires minimal maintenance. So, and it'll be on the homeowner association to maintain it. So, if you were willing to entertain a recommendation on this, I would say that I'd understand if it was conditioned on satisfying your engineers that this was a stable condition. So it becomes more of a technical issue.
Yeah, 2-to-1 slopes is, you know, with the right geotech, it's fairly common. Just have to figure out the plantings, I guess, for maintenance. But if the geotech says the 2-to-1 is fine, then that's, like I said, relatively common in steep areas.
Okay.
What would you plant on it?
Yeah, I'll have to check with my landscape folks, but it wouldn't just be a lawn. You know, there would be plantings that would help hold the slope in place, and it would be matted too, with a significant slope matting to also help it keep it in place. So, sorry, I'm not really clearly answering your question because I don't want to specify plants and tell you the wrong thing.
Thank you.
Sure.
Is there a wall to be built along Huckleberry in addition to this grade?
There is east of this. So the intent of this waiver request was to avoid the wall in this location. So
Gotcha.
as you go further east, you start the wall.
So it would go down to the sidewalk or whatever. It would go down to Huckleberry with no retaining wall per se in that section.
Right. If you and the board say no to this waiver, we'll end up adding a wall here. I just don't think that's necessary. You know, this is driven by me more than the developer. They just don't think it's necessary here.
I think you know, having green space would look nicer than a wall along the road.
Correct. And plus, you know, with stormwater, it's easier to maintain. There's a lot of issues with walls. Legacy maintenance of them, one of them. So, yeah. Okay.
Okay, good. Okay, so I'm going to move on to the next one. If I can figure out how to go back here. Please bear with me. So the next one concerns Huckleberry Road and the west side of Huckleberry and the improvements on the west side. So the history there was the original plan submission I made in March. We had asked for a waiver from improvements of Huckleberry on the west side. We were on the east side, we're widening the full 4,000 feet, adding curbing and sidewalk. On the west side, we had originally asked for a waiver from improvements here, with the exception of providing sidewalk on the north side, mainly because there's not a great deal of traffic being added here. These are larger lots and not a lot of density in this area. When we talked at that meeting, you had come back and said that you did want widening through this area, that you felt it was necessary. And we spent a little time talking about it because I'm sure there's a reason for it, but east of Cedar Crest, this is a collector road. Everything west is considered an arterial. And I can't quite figure out why. No, driving Huckleberry, knowing it's a 24-foot wide rural road, I wouldn't think you'd want it ultimately to look like Walbert. But we went back and forth on this a bit, and ultimately what we came up with was what we put in the updated waiver letter, which was trying to accommodate what you were suggesting and provide a reasonable improvement here. So we provided the 40-foot width, the full right-of-way dedication, should you ever want to make it wider, the sidewalk on the north side, the curbing, the stormwater. So the waiver request really is two things. Well, two things that remain. One is to leave it at 40 feet. So it's 24-ish now. You're good. You get 40 foot of width here. And even at 40 feet, we're going to have to figure out how to make best use of that much pavement here. So you don't have some of those concerns, safety concerns you were talking about before. And then the other piece of this is the sidewalk on the south side, which, at least from the new roadway to the west, it didn't seem like there was a logical connection of sidewalk to the west. As we've been talking about this, maybe on the east side it makes some sense, but that's where that stands. So I'll let you guys discuss that.
So 40 feet is pretty wide, and I guess the concern is if we make it even wider, I mean, it's going to be a sea of pavement, and then that can always lead to, it's one lane going east, one lane going west. It could lead to people trying to pass each other and whatnot. 40 feet, that leaves a lot of space, in my opinion.
Well, you could block with the lane, the outside area with rocks or something. I mean, we are going to eventually hear what PennDOT has to say about the end of the road and how far do they go in? Was it 150 feet or something? The width they're going to decide.
Yeah,
I think it is about 150 feet.
But yeah, they have some jurisdiction on that. Is what I said. Sorry to interrupt.
No, that's fine.
Okay.
So Jason, refresh my memory. What would you propose be built, the width of the road, with a waiver and all that?
So we're proposing basically to the collector road width, right? So
Okay.
everything to the east of here is a collector road. We're widening out the 8-9 feet on the south side, on that side. So we'd be going to 40 feet, tapering it back at the property line here, but going the full half width to the edge of the property. Sidewalk the whole length. And again, we'd have to work out a striping plan, what made the most sense here, which
Okay.
reverb there.
So
yeah, that's where we're at.
So to build it to our standards, arterial, that would be 50 feet.
It would be, yes.
Okay, I could see an argument for 40 feet just because of the location of the school bus stop and the children from the south having to cross that road to get to that bus stop. I could see parents being very concerned at even 40 feet, but 50 feet, I wouldn't want my child, and I don't have any children, crossing that road. So I could see a good argument for 40 feet, especially considering its collector on the east portion, east of Cedar Crest.
This intersection will have, at Cedar Crest, will have a traffic signal.
Yes, it's being reprofiled here to improve the grade and the sight distance, and the signals being added. So, and I also added this trail network along to the property limit since you last saw it.
Will that trail be alongside the sidewalk then? There.
The trail is independent. It's interior. It's further interior. So a trail was something that Greg Adams had in his comment letter, so that you could extend it further in the future.
This is the thing you call a 8-foot wide walking path.
Yes. Yep.
That would just be north of Huckleberry.
No, it actually extends on the entire east side of the property. So you can come down. You could come down to the intersection. It'll be signalized. You have crosswalks, and then it'll enter the property and continue all the way down to the east.
Okay.
So throughout the
On
entire site.
the other side of St. Crest.
What was that?
Yep. Okay. Okay.
Those walkways, are they to be maintained by the HOA or dedicated to the township?
I believe they get maintained by the HOA. The only thing that would be maintained by the township would be any sidewalk that was in a right of way that the township decided to accept.
So there is sidewalk and a walking path, or not?
There's either sidewalk or a walking path, depending on where you are.
On Cedar Crest,
There's not both. It would make sense to have both immediately adjacent to each other.
Well, that was my question earlier.
On Cedar Crest and the sidewalk on Huckleberry.
Correct.
Okay.
Right.
so that's what we're saying. This walking path on Cedar Crest and a sidewalk on Huckleberry. Okay.
Yes.
And there's also a walking path on Walbert, or did I see something wrong on that drawing?
On Walbert, there's path along the entire frontage.
But not a sidewalk.
Well, along the commercial frontage, there's a mixture of both there. That's a little different. That's an entire streetscape design through here.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just curious why it's asphalt instead of concrete. Concrete's typically a bit more durable and long lasting than asphalt.
Typically, asphalt's used for wider bike trails and walking trails, and sidewalk is used. Sidewalk is 4 or 5 feet wide and not typically used for bike paths, things like that. More, it's just a different feel.
So
That's just kind of.
So at your your eastern to Grandview Cemetery, where the two properties meet, you have a walking path going, and is it going to connect into the sidewalk there that's currently in front of Grandview? Like right behind, right in
Yes.
there.
Yeah, that's the intention.
So then Grandview Cemetery, who we've been going back and forth with the condition of that sidewalk, they could say, well, we're going to rip the sidewalk out and pave it as asphalt to match your project. And I don't know if that's something we're really looking for, but that's just my opinion. But
Brian, that's kind of a separate issue. We already have an open land development for that cemetery that does require some frontage improvements there. And we also have the Abatia project, which has been on hold, but that's another one that we can, get improvements there. So I'm not quite sure that the cemetery can simply say, well, we're going to put in asphalt. That's different animal.
I just get concerned about the asphalt, not holding up over time, and then it deteriorates.
Right.
Especially if the HOA is responsible for it.
Sorry, Dave. But Greg, do we have any other walking paths in the township that are of this construction? I can't think of any. Because I remember the Citronia ambulance wanted to try to do that, and we decided against that. We wanted a continuation of concrete from the underpass of 309 there
Yeah,
Right.
that's
I can't think of any other spot in our township that we've allowed this.
yeah, that's all sidewalk through there, so that's all concrete. Wow, I don't want to say no.
Right, neither do I. That's why I asked.
Yeah,
I could only offer that I know that there's township details for the trail that we were asked to follow.
Were we not promised a walking path around the park on Broadway where the ambulances are located and where all
yes,
that wonderful new building is built and
yes, yes,
That's
that
in
is the
order.
case.
Yeah.
That is on their property.
Right.
And we were promised asphalt walking paths. That phase has not come to fruition yet.
Because that's part of the Lehigh County fields and that kind of stuff, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes.
That's like internal to their project. It's not within the right of way per se, or along a frontage of road. It's not along Broadway. We put Portland cement in there, or concrete, I should say.
Yeah, but Brian, I believe the walking paths were meant to be in lieu of sidewalk along Broadway.
Right.
So this was pulled back onto their property and made asphalt. So
right.
In a sense, no, it's not in the right of way, but it's meant as a substitute.
Right. But then when the Lehigh County projects evolve, then we're going to have a hybrid because it's a park, athletic field, and that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and quite frankly, we've been looking at the whole streetscape issue along the commercial village. And I guess they were calling it an alley at this point, tree lined on both sides of a larger, wider walkway. Now, of course, the detail on that is something we can wrangle with between now and then.
Right. Okay. Because you could always make it look that way. You can make it look like asphalt by just dyeing the concrete.
Yes, or just require concrete.
and then it lasts 75 years if it's built and engineered correctly. But okay. Thank you.
Okay. So just to jump back to the waivers. So are we done with the Huckleberry waiver on the road width? I'll move on to the next one.
Okay.
Okay. So the next three all relate to stormwater. I know Tony touched on them before. I think the easiest one to get out of the way is the issue of a flat bottom basin. So Tony and I were talking about this a little bit today, and I honestly, so there's a code section that requires a 2% slope on the bottom of a basin, which is a fairly common code section that most ordinances have pulled out at this point. Although I still have to ask for the waiver often because it's not all of them. So the old grass-lined 20 years ago, stormwater basins had a slope to the bottom of those that were really just, you mowed out a basin. They were just there for peak rate. These days, whether it's an infiltration facility, which these are, or a wet pond, or a wetlands planted bottom basin that all provide water quality elements, they all need to be flat bottom. So it's a fairly common practice. And again, it's not that uncommon that I have to ask for the waiver because a lot of ordinances still have that requirement in it. But there were some questions on the geotech on all three of these. I'm not sure and their questions really dealt with infiltration capability, but the physical structure of the basin, having the bottom being level, I wouldn't think would really tie to that to a great extent.
Yeah, well, it's actually typically required and recommended that it's flat for infiltration facilities. So yeah.
And again, if I didn't do infiltration, for example, say this basin I couldn't infiltrate in, or your geotech felt that he wasn't comfortable with infiltrating in that location, I'd probably either go to a wet pond or go to a wetlands planted basin. So the wetlands plants at the bottom 6 or 8 inches would then filter some of the contaminants out, all of the road contaminants. That would all be flat bottom as well.
Okay.
So I'll keep going, but you guys can jump in if there's any other questions on that. So the 7 and 8 on the stormwater, when Tony touched on them, one of them has to do with side slopes of the stormwater basins being 3 to 1 as opposed to 4 to 1, so a little steeper on the side slopes. And the second item was going a little deeper in the 10-year storm than the 30 inches. So the code's written in a way that says if you're in a residential development, then those are the limitations, the 4 to 1 and the 30 inches in the 10-year storm. We're not dramatically exceeding though the 30-inch depth. The idea is we're trying to get additional volume out of these basins and not chew up more green space for the purpose of those basins. Usually those requirements are driven out of safety concerns and maintenance. Those are the 2 elements that usually come up. The safety is being addressed with a fence, so these will all be fenced, and there's some acknowledgement of that in the ordinance. And the maintenance is all going to be done by the homeowners association. And again, they're not intended to be planted as grass basins that you're going to try to get a mower in. These are going to be planted with vegetation that, is still going to require some maintenance, not a tremendous amount, but it's mostly going to be folks coming in with a weed whacker occasionally, or with to weed into other things, but not heavy machinery most of the time, because again, you're not going to mow them down to grass. They're going to be planted in a way that vegetation is going to be attractive and also provide some filtration. So again, the geotech is still reviewing. I provided a number of additional exhibits, information that he requested that was in the packet. He hasn't reviewed all of that in detail yet. So, but I would suggest that these 3 issues aren't, I think if you were comfortable, you could decide to make a recommendation on those. But I imagine you'd want to at least subject it to your engineers, satisfying your engineers. Again, if you were comfortable with that.
Right.
During your 10-year storm, what is the water level in the basin?
So there was a table provided, which was one of the things that the geotech had asked for, and it varies in the basin, which basin we're talking about, because there's over 12 of them across the site. The greatest depth of ponding is 52.3 inches, so a little over 22 inches above the 30-inch limitation. So they average about.
Right.
Yeah, in that one circumstance, most I think Tony mentioned they average about a foot higher than what's noted in here, and yeah, you do have some additional ponding because you're infiltrating, so you need to allow for that. So they're going to pond longer than if they were. But 30 inches is a pretty shallow depth. It's only 2.5 feet in it, and I understand why it's in the code. It's in the code in residential neighborhoods, especially if the basin's not fenced, as a precaution, but these will be fenced.
So conceivably, it could go to about 5 feet in depth.
In that one basin, yes, that is the case. That's correct.
In which particular basin was that?
Basin 3. Now, I can tell you where basin 3 is. I will. I think basin 3 is down in Closest to Walford, I think. Yes. Basin 3. That's the deepest one. Potentially the deepest one.
Thank you.
Corresponding depth.
In terms of maintenance, some of these ponds are pretty big, and then after some time, you do need to perform some maintenance, and you may need to get, some equipment down there. I just have concern, when the HOA is left to maintain these basins, and then 5 years down the road, they need to get a machine down there to clear out some stuff, and they can't get down the 3-to-1 slopes.
Yeah, and we'll grade in an access way so they can get equipment in there if they need to. So we'll have an area that's flatter than that so they can get, although the intent is not to bring in equipment very often, we'll give them the ability to do that. It's certainly a good comment.
So without the waiver, what would you do in that particular instance?
The basins would get larger to accommodate that area. We'd probably chew up some more open space, which I'd prefer not to do. But we could do that if we had to. So I don't, I think the code requirement is driven by a safety and maintenance concern, and I think we address that.
Addressing it with the fence and the some kind of cart access way ramp.
Well, and that the homeowner association is going to maintain the basins, and it's not going to be a township responsibility.
Yeah, but they'll need a way to do that.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
They still need to be able to get in there to do that.
Yes, and certainly if you were, I agree, and I'll certainly grade in an access way for that purpose, if you want to make that a condition, of course.
So this one waiver is for all of the basins throughout the development.
I don't know if the depth applies to every basin. I think there's a couple basins where depth wouldn't apply, but the majority of the stormwater basins, that's correct.
What other ones are substantial like this one?
Okay.
This is on 102 in our document, page 102.
Yes. Yeah. Basin 9 is 48 inches total. So that would be another one that's close.
Can you give us a close-up of that one as well?
Yes. And figure out where it is. With me. 9. Okay, so Basin 9 is down the hill behind the cemetery.
Okay, and that one's 48 inches.
Yes. Yeah. 4 feet in the 10-year storm.
48 inches, yeah.
Yep.
Okay, and they're listed there. And then the next one, I guess, is 40.7, about 41 inches.
Yeah, they progressively drop from there.
Basin 4.
Yeah. Okay.
You know, I've seen basins that have ponding water more than that. My main concern is, the safety. A fence can take care of that, and then maintenance. Providing an access way.
Okay, and so the maintenance and the safety can be handled by fencing and access way.
Yeah. In my opinion, the depth, I've seen a lot of basins that have more depth than that. So,
Okay.
in terms of ponding water.
Okay.
So-
Go to the
so
next one.
Let me, hold on one second. So Jason, just to go back to the basins, you're envisioning all these to have like plantings for water quality and all that kind of stuff? Like not
Yeah.
just grass.
Yeah,
The one
yeah,
thing
that's
The one thing I learned is to make sure that the homeowners association knows that specific plantings are meant to be there and they shouldn't be weed whacked. I've learned from my mother-in-law. Yeah.
yes, that's a good comment, and there'll be a maintenance plan with it.
Gotcha. Okay.
But you're right. That's
Sometimes they don't like cattails and they want to go in there and just whack away everything, and it's not good. So
no, that's not, it defeats the purpose. I agree.
Jason, correct me if I'm wrong, but these would be part of the MS4 requirements, which the township would then basically oversee.
Well, yeah. I mean, Tony, do you want to answer that?
Yes. I mean, Mike Elias in the township's MS4 coordinator, but these basins would discharge the South Whitehall Township system. So I believe there's a set of 4 notes and requirements that are necessary. It has to do with anything that discharges to a South Whitehall Township system has to provide yearly reports, maintenance schedules, items to that effect to show the township that maintenance is being done, they're still functioning, and that they're constantly being inspected so that there's no issue, sinkholes or blockages or things that would harm the township and their waters.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
So it's pretty much an extended maintenance agreement with the township.
Thank you.
Jason, has there been a submission to a NIPD submission, or is that pending, or just out of curiosity?
It hasn't been submitted yet. We have a package that's fairly close to being ready to go in. I really need to resolve these type issues so that the plan isn't changing before I submit it. So I'd like to try to address all the township's comments once and then file the NPDS. So.
Okay. When we finish these, there's more than we here we have some comments from the community, and then we'll go back through them to. Want to go to the next one?
Yes, that's okay. So the next item is the Road I connection, so back to Huckleberry on the west side. So Road I is 400 feet off of the intersection with Cedar Crest and Huckleberry, and actually Road A on the east side is roughly that same 400 feet. 400 feet is the separation distance required for a collector street. As we talked about, Huckleberry on the west side has a classification as an arterial. So we're requesting a waiver to allow that separation distance rather than the 800 feet. We don't have 800 feet here. I think Tony went through some of the justification for that. We have proper site distance. The stacking at the signal here in the worst case is only 120 feet. So you really don't get anywhere near this access point. The school district wants it as their school bus pickup. And the alternative, if we weren't permitted to have the access, would be a cul-de-sac here, which I think would force a lot of traffic out through the adjoining development. So we think it's a better plan from a connectivity point of view to have the access point here. And it really doesn't change, the classification on paper changes, but the functionality of the road doesn't change from the east side to the west side. And in fact, there's a lot less traffic on the west side. Are there any questions on that before we move on?
I had a question on the number of driveways on the opposite side of the road there. I know with Blue Barn, we asked the developer to make one road in, and then the houses had to be driveways off of that so that there weren't so many access points. There's an awful lot there, and the slope of the road as you get over there for sight lines is a little bit tricky. So has some consideration been given to
The original plan here had when we were originally looking at sketches for this, we did propose a road in this property. The problem became that Huckleberry itself as a road is already at 11% through here as a grade. So even with a longer road internal to the site, we couldn't meet the road grade that was permitted. So we just decided on an alternate plan that provided direct access. So there's 8 homes here. They're large lots. They're well over an acre, so they're pretty far separated. And the first driveway is pretty far off the intersection. So we think it works reasonably well. There was public safety had a question about site distance at each driveway they wanted me to look at. So I will certainly look at that as well, just to make sure that the grade is high enough here that everyone could see appropriately. But yeah, we did look at a road at one point through here. Okay, so I will move on to the next item. The next item concerns the 2 cul-de-sacs that were discussed earlier. So there's 2 cul-de-sacs that, based on the way your ordinance measures a cul-de-sac from the throat back, are less than the required 250 feet. As Tony pointed out, the ordinance references liquid fuels, and the way that PennDOT measures the road cul-de-sac, these would meet the definition, even though they're a little short of the 250 feet. So the way the township ordinance measures it, the way PennDOT measures it, they would be acceptable for liquid fuels. So the northernly cul-de-sac, both of them only have 4 units on them. They have adequate site distance, driveway separation. The lower cul-de-sac, we're constrained by the extension of Yellowstone and the limit of Cedar Crest. We're only a few feet short of the requirement. The northern one, we're a little shorter than that, but we thought the layout makes more sense with the units off the backside than trying to lengthen the cul-de-sac kind of arbitrarily and putting the units below that.
Could any of those homes on Road H cul-de-sac be shifted to the left?
This actually came up with Park and Rec. The challenge there is that this is the steepest portion of the site, so that we have the biggest grading challenges there, which is why we left it green here, to try to create some space and some room to grade. So
There's other townhomes, the other group of homes, was the grading done? They're in pretty steep areas too, aren't they?
do you mean further to the east?
No, so there's the green space, and then immediately to the left of the green space, there's townhomes. I believe those are in pretty steep areas too, but the grading was.
Yeah, it's not quite as steep. It's not quite as steep through here. So that's, this was the area that we chose to leave open for that purpose. So I'm still looking at it for Park and Rec, but I think it's a real challenge when I first started looking at it to try to put units in here, and catch the grade and make the road work through here. So we chose to leave this as an open area. Any further questions on the cul-de-sac lens? Okay.
Okay.
We're getting there.
I actually do have one. At the lower, at the bottom one, is there any connection to the sidewalk at Cedar Crest there? Like that, or path or whatever? Is there going to be a sidewalk on the west side of Cedar Crest?
There isn't intending to be, no. There was some discussion with Park and Rec about having some informal pathways in some locations that we still kind of have to work out with them, but there isn't a formal sidewalk through here. There's one property that's an out parcel here, and the focus is to try to get the road width we need through here. So the pathways are going to run on the east side of the property.
I could just see people using that cul-de-sac and making their own path into a dangerous situation, but that's just human nature.
Well, and maybe a pathway along out from the cul-de-sac down to this intersection might make sense.
That would make sense, yeah.
Yeah, and I could certainly add that to make that connection, because I understand what you're saying.
People are always shortest path,
Sure. Yeah. You don't want to encourage them away from the highway.
Yeah, because there's 6 lanes of traffic there. So it's like, yeah, you don't want yeah.
Understood.
Thank you.
We can do that. Okay, so we're getting towards the end here. This same area, this road I, there's a waiver request here for this radius and this radius are both 100 feet, and the tangent it ties into are a little short. So that's not uncommon to a number of the waivers are granted in conditional use on the east side of the project. The 150 feet is the requirement for a local street. This works for 15-mile-an-hour speed limit. And it lays out as a better plan here. There was some concern, I think, because the west side of the roads on the west side of the site were offered for dedication to the township. Everything on the east side is proposed to be private, as well as the development all the way to the southwest. But these upper roads were intended for dedication to the township, and I understand that there is some concern with the radii and the probably even more than that is the retaining walls on either side. So the developer is willing to leave these as private if the board feels that that's a better condition here. But the waiver request is for the radius. It's a safe condition and works for a 15-mile-an-hour speed limit around those curves. And it's not uncommon to what some of the waivers that were granted on the east side of the project.
So the winding road, that somewhat acts as a traffic calming device in the then the other scenario is if they're going too fast and then they get out of control.
Yes, it should act as a traffic calming measure. You do have some other intersections that will slow them down as well. You don't have a long run. So I think the concern from the public safety is more about the retaining walls and whether or not they wanted to take a road that had walls adjacent to it, or leave that with the developer, and less about the radius.
So if they would be private, all the roads that are shown would be private, or just that one?
What I had, and this is subject to your and the board's discretion, but what we had talked about was potentially leaving, extending the public from the extension of Ridge Lane and up Road I to Huckleberry. We would still offer this for dedication, what I'm kind of outlining, and everything south of that would be private.
Okay.
So that would take those cul-de-sacs as well, as well as the piece of road through here.
How wide is that road? What is that? IJ, whatever. The windy road, the one we're discussing. How wide is that road?
I should know the answer to that off the top of my head. It does get narrower. It uses the alternate section that's allowed by ordinance. And I don't know the width off the top of my head, but it's narrower than the road north of that.
Yeah, I saw that, and I was just, that's also a traffic calming thing too. You keep it narrow, but
yeah, I want to say it's 28 feet, but I have to double check that.
And it's sidewalks on both sides?
Yes, yeah, everything has sidewalks on both sides.
And the retaining wall, what elevation are we looking at there?
They vary, but it does get. I'd have to pull up the grading plan, but it does get over 10 feet in some locations.
And is that's a drop, or is that?
Yeah, you're climbing up the hill as you come up here.
Yeah.
So yes,
Okay.
it is a drop.
I'm assuming there'll be some guardrail.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, it'll be a safe condition when we're done. It's just a maintenance concern, I think, of that was brought up to me.
so is this residential aspect considered going to be under an HOA as well, or not?
The whole project will have an HOA.
Gotcha.
Whether or not the commercial piece will be part of that same HOA or a subset of that, but it'll be covered on an HOA.
Because if they're going to be private roads, you almost have to have an HOA in order to pay for that maintenance of that stuff. So that's why I was asking.
Yes, and then you've got open space that has to be maintained and stormwater basins, and yeah, it'll be a substantial HOA.
I do like the aspect of the township taking control of those two other roads, but the private is probably a good idea. So, okay.
Just a slightly different question for you. Where the road comes from your development east of Cedar Crest into Cedar Crest, will there be a traffic signal at that intersection?
Cedar Crest. Oh, east of Cedar.
Keep going a little bit north.
The only traffic signals that are proposed are at the intersection of Cedar Crest and Huckleberry, and at our main access way at Office Center Drive.
Okay, so there will not be a traffic signal proposed at that spot. Okay.
No, I don't think we would. I mean, Rob could speak to that, but I don't think we'd meet warrants for any other signals.
Okay.
That's correct.
Wasn't there originally several years ago a traffic light proposed on Walbert? I can't think of the name of the road now. Is it Valley Forge? I'm not sure, but west of this project.
Coming down from.
I thought there was like, it
Across.
wasn't
Brandywine?
Yellowstone. It was the
Brandywine, I think, yeah.
Brandywine, yeah.
What happened to that?
Because I remember when we were going through the conditional use, there was talk of one going there, and then now it's gone. So
Yeah, that was with, as the plan has evolved and obviously the traffic flow evolved with the plan, the warrants were not satisfied for signalization at that location.
So I guess I could just move on to the last waiver. I have an exhibit for that. So the last waiver relates to the parking lot for the existing office barn that's being preserved. There's a waiver requested for the parking lot separation off the intersection. It was suggested that we look at taking that access off of the cul-de-sac bulb, which makes some sense because you've only got the 4 units using that. And we kind of sketched that in here to show that we'd still need a waiver from the 150-foot separation because of the existing building location. We'd have to cut back a little bit of the existing wall there. But we can push the driveway out from, before it was 73 feet going in this direction to 109 feet going in this direction. And again, it's less used chunk of road. So it makes sense to make the change if the board is supportive of that, but it would still require a waiver.
Yeah, I think that's minimally used. I don't think it's much of a hazard or anything there.
Okay. Great. So that's the last one. Any more questions from the Planning Commission before go to the questions that we have from the community? Okay, we'll go. How do you want to do this?
I can take this one, Bill.
Okay.
I
All right,
actually,
first,
hold on. I actually do have one question. Maybe the lawyer knows, maybe Mr. Preston knows, maybe Engelhardt knows. How come we haven't gotten all our review comments from the various agencies that have been, I'm sure that you submitted to? Has there been any delay from like the LVPC, the Lehigh Valley Planning Commission, or the Lehigh County Conservation District? It seems like if we saw this first in May, that we should have gotten comments back by now, I would think.
I can answer part of that. Well, actually, I can answer both these parts of that. So as far as Lehigh Valley Planning Commission, when I filed the application with them, there was some back and forth on the check. We actually paid them too much, and so I had to replace that, which happened fairly recently. So you should get review comments from Lehigh Valley Planning Commission before the next time we meet.
Okay.
And Lehigh County Conservation District, we haven't filed an NPDES application yet. So
Gotcha.
it's when we do file one, you'll get copied on that submission and then certainly get those comments.
Right. Because I was just going through our packet here, and I understand the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation. You've been having the dialogue with them, and and our Landscape and Shade Tree Commission is going to meet on it soon. So I was just going through the bullet points here. Thank you.
Yeah, normally you would have Lehigh Valley Planning Commission comments by now, but they are reviewing it now. So we paid them too much. We gave them too much money.
And then you throw in a pandemic on top of that, and you have,
Yes,
okay.
that slowed it down a little too.
Thank you.
I'd like to add to that comment as well. The LVPC held their General Assembly meeting, I guess about a month ago, and they talked about the changes that they've made to their comp plan and the review letters, and they'll be much more comprehensive and much more helpful to municipalities. And I have to say, I personally did ask about that at our last planning meeting in regards to this plan. I'm a little bit disappointed that they weren't included to assist us with the number of waivers we're looking at. So just want to voice that opinion.
One item I wanted to bring up, that the mobility easement. I know we had some discussions about that last week, but one thing I noticed was, looks like there's 2 inches of wearing course provided for it. Seems a bit thin, like a thin amount of asphalt, just 2 inches.
I'll have to look at the spec. I know there were some comments on the spec for the emergency access that we may still have to address. We did widen it out per public safety's comment.
Yeah, I just
Okay.
feel 2 inches won't hold up to emergency vehicles.
Another question with that is that we want to see the road design for that.
Understood.
Okay. All right. Why don't we move now, if it's okay, we'll move to the questions from the community. And Greg, do you want to?
Yep. All right, first one up is Monica Hodges of 1707 Penn's Crossing. She asked a couple of questions. Actually, it's Robert Hodges. First question is, why not join the 2 cul-de-sacs into the loop, which I believe is on the west side? One of the cul-de-sacs involved in the waiver request for length and number of units. He states that this would probably remove the problem with all the waivers. His second question is, in what way would allowing this waiver benefit South Whitehall? And if he's out there, Robert, do you have any more questions?
Yeah, yes, this is Robert Hodges. I'd like to expand on that. I think the first question speaks for itself. Just in general, I'm sure that when all of our saldo, or if it's an individual saldo that covers everything, was created, it was done with a lot of time and effort and thought put into it for the safety of the community. And what I see here is a development which is trying to be put in without any, well, with a lot of disregard for the saldo. And they're asking for waivers to fit their development into our community, where in fact what they should be doing is fitting their development to our community and to our saldo. And I haven't, in this whole discussion tonight, I haven't heard a single discussion about how any of these waivers help our community. In all cases, it helps their development. So I'd like for them to expand on how each one of these waivers helps South Whitehall, not how it helps them to fit more of their development into this development. Thank you.
Who are we?
Yeah, hi, Jim Preston here. I'm not going to go through each of the waivers and say how it helps South Whitehall, because that's not a requirement, at least none that I'm familiar with, of any saldo provisions. As I said at the outset, every property is unique. It's unique unto itself. It's unique unto its contours and grades. It's unique as to its surrounding properties, to the road networks. It's unique in aspects that one saldo cannot anticipate the design criteria that's necessary to develop a site. You have never seen, as a planning commission, you have never seen a project come through your township that didn't require waivers. They don't exist. When you do a plan, something in the saldo needs to be adjusted. It's always been that way. It's always the case. It may just be a reporting requirement showing features within 500 feet or some other item, or plan size. The outcome is that a saldo is never a one size fits all proposition. The process that we're engaged in now is to design the site in a way that recognizes its unique features. For example, the road networks, where the existing intersections are, where they line up, where they don't line up, what the grades are on the site. That's the process that we're going through now. I'm not familiar of any criteria that says that an applicant has to show in a waiver request how it benefits the township. I've never heard of that, and I'm not really prepared to deal with that. I'm just not familiar with that.
I think what they're trying to get at in terms of the two cul-de-sacs is waivers being requested, and is there due to the additional homes being over the saldo, and is there a way to rearrange that road to connect those two? Because you may be able to connect those two, but you may lose some of the townhomes.
I got you. Yeah.
Yeah, so
I understand
there
what
may
you're saying.
be a way
I
to
misunderstood the question, Mr. Wilson. I apologize. The question that I heard was I was supposed to go through each waiver request and identify how it benefits the township, which is something that I'm not, I wouldn't be doing. But getting back to what you're saying, I'm going to turn that one back over to Jason. From what I understood, there was problems with grading in there. There's the desire for the township, or at least the community, not to have us go out through onto Valley Forge Road. And I think what Jason was trying to do was to come up with a way to provide some emergency access. And if I understand, I'm not the engineer, but I thought the grading was the issue, so that in order to connect those up, we'd probably need a whole parcel of waivers. But Jason, why don't you talk to that?
Yeah.
Right. I mean, we had spent some time on that before, but the very original sketch had the full connection out to Valley Forge, which wouldn't have necessitated the waiver, but there was resistance and a suggestion that we shouldn't make that connection. This goes back probably 3 years now. This is how the plan developed where it is, and then the suggestion was, where's the best place to put an emergency access? And we had discussed that before. Accomplishing a compliant road on the west side of this area, in addition to this road, becomes problematic. I think it's functional for an emergency access, but would be very difficult for a true roadway connection to be accomplished. And it's really not about the number of units, because I can find room to put the roadway connection in. It's really just about grade and curvature.
Yeah, would you, because that curving road, you have it sort of long and windy to work with the grade. So would you be able to connect that lower cul-de-sac to the higher road with a similar longer windy road? What would result in, though, you may lose some of those townhomes. I think that's what some of the people are getting at. And, we're saying it's a grading issue, but it may be related to density too, because we may be able to fit something in, but it might need to be placed where the homes are.
I could certainly look closer at it, but I don't think it could be accomplished based on grade.
Mm-hmm.
And I also want to say that I don't recall any resistance for that connection from this board. I could be wrong, but I'm just stating what I recall over the last 3 years to Valley Forge. Yeah.
So you're saying to relook at that?
Well, I think it's an option, but if there's resistance that I'm unaware of, I would like to know about it. But if there's an easement off of Valley Forge going to that parcel, obviously there was an intent from before I joined the planning commission, whenever that residential area was developed, that there was an envision of a connection there if there's an easement that exists on somebody's deed for that. So, but
I think that would actually be the best solution.
right.
From a,
That just for interconnectivity, it's very frustrating. Cul-de-sacs are very frustrating. I could see a lot of frustrated people going down such a long cul-de-sac to realize it doesn't go anywhere, because people get lost all the time. And they're always looking for a shortcut, and they end up, and then what they do is they'll go down there, they'll hit the cul-de-sac, get angry, and then drive back even faster, and you have an unsafe condition. Where interconnectivity is always good and it's good solid planning to have interconnectivity, in my opinion. So
I don't have any argument with that. Greg, do you have any problem with I don't know. I don't know where that came from, that issue.
I recall very early in the process that one of the property owners there questioned the validity of that easement. And as far as I understand, we did the research and found out that yes, it is on a recorded land development plan. So it's an easement there. Whether there was any other resistance, I'm not aware of it either. So
that easement would be on their deed, hopefully.
Hopefully, yes, but it's definitely on a land development plan.
Gotcha.
I have that copy, so we have it.
Thank you.
Okay, so can we look at that?
Like such a simple solution to the problem. A simple and straightforward solution. I'd really look into it carefully.
Greg, when you said that there is an easement that you found on the plan, was it clear that it was an easement for future access with a public road, as opposed to just simply a general easement for utilities and the like?
No, I'm reasonably sure. I mean, it's wide enough for a road, I believe. And I think it's been shared with your office.
Okay.
So if you like, I can go dig it out and share it again.
Well, if the planning commission is looking to send the developer in that direction, that's an important question that has to be addressed.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't want to send them towards a dead end. No pun intended.
I can certainly confirm it tomorrow morning.
Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
May I finish off, since it was my statement that started that? May I make one last statement? Again, this is Robert Hodges. Mr. Preston, I appreciate what you have to say. And although you're under no requirement to show how any of these waivers benefit South Whitehall, I would say South Whitehall has no requirement to grant you any of the waivers. And so I asked the Planning Commission to think carefully about each one of them and consider what is best for South Whitehall and not for the development. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll go to the next.
Next one is John Chaya, 2911 Huckleberry Road. His question that he writes is, where would all the water go from the slope? And that was during the Huckleberry Road 2-to-1 or 3-to-1 slope waiver conversation. John, if you're out there, you can expound upon that now.
Yeah, in the very first plan that we saw, that area that they're talking about was a retention pond, and now it doesn't appear to be. And as we discussed in the overview earlier, that's fairly marked slope there. And my question is, where's all that water going to go? And obviously no wall there, it's going to go right out onto the road or across the sidewalk. So I don't understand the reason why it was a retention pond first and now it isn't. So just That's the question I have, Greg.
Sure. Yeah, I think at one point it was looked at as potentially putting a retention pond there or a stormwater basin there. The grades don't support that. The Huckleberry is being widened through here, curb and sidewalk added, as well as storm drainage along that side of Huckleberry. So it'll be picked up in that storm drainage on the east side of Huckleberry. And again, it runs off there now, so we'll be picking it up actually. Whereas today it's not, just drains down to that road.
Yeah, it does run off in the wintertime. It covers the road with ice. So just a point of order.
Yeah, and sure, no, it's a good question, and it will all be picked up in a new storm drainage system.
Okay.
And would that storm water catch it before it hits the sidewalk, or would it traverse over the sidewalk into the curb? Or I know that you can do a lot of magical things with stormwater, but I was just wondering, because I would hate to have that sidewalk become an ice skating rink.
Yeah, I think that the stormwater is in the roadway, so it would have to go over the sidewalk first. The sidewalk would have a cross slope on it, so it would run off the sidewalk into the road.
Okay.
Yeah, if you kind of look at where my driveway comes down, that's the white curvy thing that comes down. The elevation across the street is probably 6 or 7 feet from the roadway, existing roadway up to the land. So I mean it's gonna. I mean you guys have to figure it out, but that's going to be a rush of water coming down there. All right.
Understood.
Okay, next up, we have Cindy Smith of 2442 Huckleberry Road. Cindy writes, why isn't there a connecting road from Walbert Avenue to Huckleberry Road? And then she asks, what about the pavements? Does this affect everyone that lives on Huckleberry Road? And is anyone looking at the effect on Filbert Avenue? Will they widen Cedar Crest and Huckleberry Road to accommodate the increased traffic? And Cindy, if you're out there, you can expound upon that now.
Hi, I'm here. I live on Huckleberry Road at the very top. Our property runs adjacent at the very bottom.
This is what I wanted you to, so you could tell me.
Huckleberry Road right now. Can you hear me?
Yes.
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 Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Huckleberry Road right now is a dangerous road. At the very peak, because of the virus, FedEx, UPS, any delivery truck is not allowed to come up our driveway. And so they park their truck on Huckleberry Road. And you know how narrow it is, and at the very top, you can't see cars coming either way. And I'm standing there waiting to call 911 because it's going to be a head-on collision.
When you say the very top, where do you mean? Where are you talking about?
Around the curve up to the tip of on Huckleberry Road toward Allentown.
Okay. Can you see the drawing on the?
Towards the top right of the screen, are you talking?
No, we're at the end of the property. Go down Huckleberry Road, and right where their retention pond area is, there's a wooded area, I believe, half owned by Allentown and South Whitehall, and then our property starts.
Gotcha.
Okay.
So what they're doing there is affecting us.
You're actually east of the retention pond?
Yes.
Towards Allentown, yeah.
Towards Allentown.
Yeah. right as you go around that curve, like I said, there's a small wooded area, and then our property goes all the way over almost to Dawes Street. So we have all that frontage on Huckleberry Road.
Is your neighbor Robert Rue?
That's my brother.
Ah,
Yeah.
okay.
Okay.
So her first question was, why isn't there a connecting road from Walbert Avenue to Huckleberry Road? Are you talking on the east side of Cedar Crest or the west side of Cedar Crest?
Anywhere, well, east side.
Okay.
That was in an original plan.
Yes, it was. And that's what we're looking at. We asked them that's right now.
Okay.
That's going to be a what's the term? It's a pathway.
Mobility.
A mobility pathway or easement. We are asking them that to be designed as a roadway. That was, I think we need to talk about that again, but I think we need to see what it looks like. And we may go through that again. It did not pass the Planning Commission the last time, is the reason it was taken out.
I think it definitely should be looked at again because the congestion on Huckleberry Road, there's more people walking, there's more people riding bikes, which is a good thing. Unfortunately, there's nowhere for them to be, and cars have to go on the opposite side of the road, and that is a dangerous, dangerous thing, especially at the top of Huckleberry Road, where we are. Because you
Okay.
have Fairview, Molinaro, I don't know what they call it now, but that development's right there. So all those people are using Huckleberry Road. So it's not just this development. There's, the behind Sims Market, there's a point from Huckleberry to Walbert via Filbert Street. So why isn't there one up further connecting the two major roads?
Okay. Your comments appreciated.
All right, well, thank you for your time and consideration.
And we will look at that.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Next up, Scott Collins asked me an unrelated question and I answered him. So that's taken care of. Next one up is Lee Solt. He writes, South Whitehall Township needs to be firm with having concrete sidewalks. The township has too many areas that the residents are walking on the street. He also asks, can you please explain how the flow of water from one basin, or explain the flow of water from one basin to another? Are they connected? Lee, if you're out there and want to add to that, go ahead.
I'm here, Greg. Thank you. Yeah, my question about the sidewalks is, I understand, I agree with Mr. Wilson that we need to, or Commissioner Wilson, that we need to have concrete sidewalks, especially fronting Walbert and Cedar Crest and those areas that are going to be hopefully used a lot as compared to just asphalt. I like the developer has sidewalks in front of all the houses, which is great, but I think we need to have concrete sidewalks on Walbert and Cedar Crest and Huckleberry for the residents to walk. So that was just my comment concerning that. And Mr. Engelhardt, can you please tell me about the stormwater and how it's supposed to flow? I mean, obviously downhill, but how does it interconnect with each other and into the sewage system?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it would take some time to go into a lot of detail about the stormwater, but most of it is not connected from stormwater basin to stormwater basin. Most of it is connected independently, where there's a drainage area that's tributary to a specific stormwater basin, and then that is taken out into a new conveyance system. Most everything from the top of the ridge down ultimately makes itself out, comes out to drainage in Walberg. But most are not connected from one to the other. So most are independent. You know, they have a drainage area that drains to them, and then they independently drain from there. So
the upper
I'm
development
sure I'll
that's
have
on
to.
So the upper development that's up on Huckleberry, where does that whole thing that is on the top of the ridge, where does that drain into? Because the drainage ponds that are on the southeast side and I guess the closest one down to on Cedar Crest towards where the retail is are kind of small. I'm just wondering where all that wastewater from all those houses are going to go.
Okay, so we're just talking about storm drainage at this point. So
Correct. Yes.
wastewater would be going.
Yes, storm drainage. Yes, correct.
Yeah. So some of the stormwater on the top of the ridge gets diverted down away from Huckleberry and down towards Walberg. What remains, the stormwater basins that are located on the east side will pick up the majority of that area. So you're reducing the drainage to the north below what it is today by taking some of it to the south and the rest of it to the east. And I'm sure I'll end up going into further detail on that at a future meeting that's unrelated to waivers. But when I have all those documents in front of me as we continue to work forward on this project.
Okay, thank you. The other question I had was concerning roads, the I, J, and H, that section. That whole section, it seems like as from an emergency standpoint, for emergency vehicles, for travel, you're asking for waivers, and excuse my terminology is not right. I'm not privy to all the documents and all the correct language, so excuse me if I'm not speaking correctly in your terms, but you're asking for waivers on the corners, you're asking for waivers on the cul-de-sacs, you're asking for waivers, and some of your roads aren't even the correct grade at this point. That seems to me like if you've got a 15-mile-an-hour road with a fire truck trying to get down to the southwest corner of that area, and in the middle of winter, in a storm, either through there or through an emergency easement that's there, it just seems like that whole section is I don't want to say the word poorly planned, but it doesn't flow very good at all, and it doesn't lend itself to the emergency personnel or anybody getting in there to do any kind of services that need to be done. So I think that whole section, with roads I, J, and H it's not a very good section for emergency vehicles to get through, especially fire trucks and such in the wintertime.
Yeah, and I'll just only comment that we do adhere to the grade requirements. So the waivers associated with the horizontal radiuses and the length of the cul-de-sac.
But weren't some of the grades of the roads 8 and 10%?
No, not in this. Not in the.
We
meet all the. Yeah, just an emergency, just a proposed emergency access that we're looking at. That's not a roadway.
Okay. Okay. The other question I have is, go ahead. Somebody else was supposed to say something.
No, go ahead. I'll wait for you to be done.
The other question I have is, you talk about all these documents, but I have the ridgefarms.com site. Are all these documents that we're seeing tonight on that site, the 138 pages or whatever it is, are they all there? Just so we can see them? Is that where they are?
The full submission set is on that website. Some of what I'm presenting tonight are potential revisions to those. So those don't live there. Those are just for discussion. But
Okay.
the full set of drawings with all the detail is on there.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay, and Lee, this is Bill McNair. Your comment, it seems like then you might be in favor of the connection to, what's the road, for the
Valley Forge.
Valley Forge Road.
Yeah, I think whatever we can do at the safest for our emergency personnel is probably the best thing, because I mean, you've got a 15-mile-an-hour road that's narrower, that I mean is on a grade. Granted, the road to Valley Forge would be on a grade also, but it would be more accessible for emergency personnel coming to that area.
Yeah, and especially with Greenewald's Fire Company would be using Huckleberry, that would just give them another access to respond to the west. You know,
Right,
the more
they'd have to come up,
the better, in my
they'd
opinion.
have to come up Springhouse and go out Walbert and get up that way. They could get there a lot quicker than going all up through Cedar Crest and up to Huckleberry and down and around.
Well, I didn't catch all that, but Greenewald's would be coming out Huckleberry from.
Oh yes, I'm sorry. I'm thinking Citronia. Sorry.
I mean, everybody comes. Don't get me wrong, but
right.
The closest would be Greenewald's. They would come that way, and then Citronia would come from Springhouse, and Woodlawn would come down Walbert. So.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
May I ask a follow-up clarification question? Jason, you just, I want to make sure I understood you. So road I, the 15-mile-an-hour road, you're not calling that a road, you're calling that an emergency access?
No, I was just clarifying that we're not asking for any relief on grade of the road. This meets the road I meets the grade, the grading standards, the 7% or less.
So that's, okay. I didn't think that was the number you gave me for the road. So what is the slope of that road then? I thought you didn't know what it was.
I know it meets the requirements. I don't know the exact number without flowing through the plans, but it's 7% or less. Somewhere between 6 and 7%. 7% is what's allowed on a local street in the ordinance. 6% is if it's a collector road. 7% if it's a local street.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, next question. Monica Hodges has apparently a follow-up question. Monica, go ahead.
Hi, this is completely unrelated to my husband, Rob. He asked questions earlier, so my turn. Thank you. I just wanted to clarify, did you say that on the 2 cul-de-sac bulbs, there were 15 homes allowed by the Saldo and 26 homes requested by the waivers? Is that correct? Did I hear correctly? Is that a yes?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so I have 2 questions and a comment. Chalmette Road, will there be any type of traffic control? That is a more quiet road. It will get some spillage. There are a lot of kids in country crossings. What will be done to the road there to help ease traffic and enforce speeds? The second question is also, is it possible to wait for the comments from the LVPC before proceeding? Because I feel their input could be really important. And I hope I didn't misunderstand that. And the third thing was just a general comment. I know I've said it before at the other meetings, and this is with all due respect, Attorney Preston, you are talking about the uniqueness of the property and how the Saldo needs to be tweaked to enhance that uniqueness. But what I'm hearing and have been hearing, you know, road grades, entranceways, increased traffic, overburdening Huckleberry Road. I feel sometimes we're trying to put too much into this very unique and beautiful property. We're trying to put a puzzle piece there that perhaps doesn't fit quite well. And why not in those two cul-de-sacs, for example, instead of putting the 26 homes that you requested, why not make them 15 single homes? And why not do the same thing at the upper part of Huckleberry on the east side of Cedar Crest? Why don't you make more single family homes rather than cram all those townhomes in there? I know the response is because it's zoned that way. Our commissioners from years ago zoned it that way. But I think a real talent of a developer can be accommodating the plan and fitting it into this very hilly and challenging property. And just because you can, it doesn't mean you should. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I can address one item there on Calumet Road. There was discussion with public safety about adding a traffic calming measure along that roadway. And the developer has agreed to work with the township on that existing roadway and we're not sure what that measure would be at this point. But it's open-minded to assist with a traffic calming measure on that roadway.
Thank you.
Okay, next up we have one more, Jacob Roth of 1499 White Oak Road. He asked, I would like to make a statement during the public comment. Jacob, if you're out there, now's your time.
Yeah, this is Jacob Roth. I have two things I want to mention. And the first is in regards to the Western driveway waiver request. The applicant tonight said that PennDOT has approved the traffic study, and they also imply that they approved the driveway. And I just have a question of the applicant. Is there, either in that PennDOT approval of the traffic study, an explicit statement saying that they approved the driveway? Is there a clause? Is there an additional document? Where in that document does it specifically say that PennDOT approves the driveway? I know that they approved the traffic study, I get that, but where does it specifically say that they approved the driveway? That's my first point, and then I have something else after if I receive an answer to that.
Sure, I can answer that. Within that letter, within the approval, the TIS approval letter, it doesn't just say that the traffic study is approved. It goes through and it documents, the basis of the traffic study, and then outlines the specific roadway improvements that PennDOT is expecting to see as part of the development that were outlined in the traffic study. And it goes through item by item, it lists them, and one of those is the right in, right out driveway to Walford Avenue.
And so that was, I know they said that's what they recommend, but does that, so that you're saying that that driveway does have PennDOT's approval explicitly, without a doubt?
Through the traffic study, yes, it does.
Okay, thank you. And the second thing I wanted to mention is just more of a general statement. Tonight, the Planning Commission is being asked to approve these waivers, and some would like to make it out for the public to believe that the Planning Commission has to approve what PennDOT has approved, or saying in agreement with basically what PennDOT has said that the board or that the commission must also approve that. And I want to make it very clear to members of the public and also to members of the commission that you do not
have to approve something just because PennDOT says, gives it their approval. You are essentially accountable to either approve or disapprove of the waiver. And if you feel that it does not meet our SALDO requirements, you do not have to approve it. The only entity that the commission is beholden to is the public, not to the applicant, not to PennDOT. You are your own government entity. You only report to the people of your community, not to PennDOT, not to the applicant. I ask the public to keep that in mind as they talk about this project. I ask the applicant to keep that in mind. And I also ask the commission, most importantly, to keep that in mind, because you are only beholden to the community. And I hope that you make decisions in the best interest, not of the Department of Transportation at the state level, and not of the applicant, but of the community. And that's all I have for this evening.
Thank you for your comments. And we understand that as far as state roads go, we do have to listen to PennDOT because they control them. So we do have to, as far as those options, follow what they're going to say.
Can we discuss that topic? So if PennDOT approves it, you're saying that overrules our ability to deny a waiver as a planning board?
No, it does not. It just,
okay. I misunderstood
what
you.
you're going to do on the PennDOT road is controlled by PennDOT. We can't overrule PennDOT and say, no, we're not going to do it your way. We're going to do it another way.
This is Jacob Roth at the follow-up. I wasn't in any way insinuating that you would overrule what PennDOT requires in terms of what they lay out. I was just saying that you do have the ability to overrule or to disapprove of a waiver. I wasn't denying that you were, going to overrule PennDOT, but that you do have the ability to approve or disapprove a waiver.
Okay, understood. Are there any more questions, Greg?
Yes. Let's see. Lee Solt, you had another question. Was that answered in your earlier?
Yes, it was, Greg.
Okay. We'll move on to Cindy Smith. She has one more question. Can South Whitehall put a light at the Paddock, Supreme, Walbert to Roth Avenue? With Dollar General store recently built, that's a problem.
Busy intersection.
Hi, that's a problem. If you're on Huckleberry and you try to turn onto where Supreme is, and you have to watch Walbert and oncoming traffic, and now Dollar General or whatever it is there. There should have been a light there, I think, a long time ago, but as a result of the Dollar General, has any consideration been given? Maybe this is off topic, but just throwing it out there.
It is off topic. I do understand the question. My daughter had an accident there a number of years ago in front of the Paddock. You can use, there's a light, what's the road just west of there?
Whitehall.
Whitehall. And when I drive in that area now, I don't use the Huckleberry exit. I go on Whitehall, and that's a safer way to go. So there is a safer way now to go.
But is there any consideration or any future plans for looking at that? Again, that's probably off topic, sorry.
I don't know if we can answer any answers for warrants, or I don't know how that process is. Walbert is Walbert a PennDOT road?
Yes.
So,
yes.
The Huckleberry where it meets is Township. And what's the other road? Helen? It's a weird intersection there, but
yeah, I understand. But for a light on Walbert would need some PennDOT input there also. Is that,
Well, again, I apologize. This is off of topic for tonight, so thank you.
okay.
And we have one last in the chat box. Monica Hodges making a statement, public safety should always be priority.
Okay.
And that is,
No argument.
that is the last in the chat box. So if you want to open it up to cell phone users.
Yeah, there's one caller that I muted. There was some feedback, so I'm going to open up caller 9. If you have any comments, feel free.
You get unmuted ahead of time. You tell them you want to be unmuted.
You're caller 9. Do I hear caller 9?
How do you get into them? You should be on right now. I'm not. Well, turn it up.
We hear you.
We hear Sean
We
Hugler.
vaguely hear you.
If any telephone callers want to make a comment, now is your time to do so. Please, if you're doing so, please state your name and address for the record. Thank
Hello?
you.
Try right now. Hello?
Hello, we hear you.
Finally, thank you. This is Sean Hubler calling. I don't, huh? I'm so disgusted at how this has been from the beginning. I can't believe it. You have a pristine property and all you want to do is make a total disaster. You are annihilating a landform. You have not addressed any of the water runoff issues. You're putting in all kinds of traffic. There's just been no consideration for us residents, and everybody's sitting around quibbling about the elevations or whether it's a 7% grade or a 10% grade. Why don't you look at the absolute ridiculousness of that? This project does not belong in this community, period. I'm so upset with this. Y'all sit around and accommodate it. There's a lot of us seniors don't want it. It's gonna ruin everything in South Whitehall. You're taking the premium corner of South Whitehall and allowing K builders to run the township, and us seniors have nothing to say about it. We should just sit around after plowing all our tax money into it and saying it's okay. And as the other lady said, just because you can do it doesn't mean you should. This should be an educational farm. This should be open space. You're going to be running all kinds of heavy equipment for the next 10 years to tear up all the landform. And then you're going to reconfigure all the roads, and I'm going to hear heavy equipment all night and I can't sleep. And I live right off of Cedar Crest Boulevard. This is wrong. This has been wrong from the beginning. This has been sneaky from the beginning. And you can sit around and give me all the excuses you want, but there's no environmental consideration. There's no impact. It's like you got a cruise ship for 2,000 people that you're going to put 4,000 people on it, and then you're going to stand around and wonder why the toilets are overflowing. Your water runoff stuff, your detention ponds, you got a field that is absorbing the water now. Refer back to last Friday when it was pouring rain. And you're going to put in all these stupid detention ponds. This is wrong. The whole concept is wrong. Instead of worrying about a bunch of old people living on the hill, you might want to worry, like for Jacob Roth, where our young people are going to have open space. And by the way, you might want to think about agricultural education because we're losing it very fast. Sorry, I'm upset, but I'm upset with this whole thing. I've had it. I don't care what the developer wants. It's not fair to us. It has never been fair to us. And all you want to do is accommodate all of these people coming into the area, all this traffic, all this pollution. I don't know where all these animals are going to go, but we're on the Atlantic Flyway. You already made a mess of Rutz's farm. It's a disaster over there. And you 3-lane Walbert, and it's a mess. Now you're going to do it over here and add tractor trailers. And by the way, all these tall buildings throw shadows. There's nothing but sunlight, and clean air over there. Where's your carbon capturing? Where's any of it? I guess you don't want to discuss that. It's not
Well, with
funny.
that-
It's disgusting. It's been disgusting. I worry about it every day. 65 years old, and I get to look out my window and see a mess instead of greenery. You want to act as if the only thing that matters is where's Dam Park? Oh, there's your park and there's your open space, and the rest of it we got to accommodate the developer. Really, really.
Thank you, Sean.
I'm upset. Do you have any answers? No.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you for your comment. That's so
You're
rude.
welcome.
We've got,
I think it's rude what you're doing to our township, to be honest.
are there any other callers out there with comments or questions? Okay, hearing none. I've got Dave Burke in the chat box asking, could K Builders provide the document that includes PennDOT's explicit approval of the driveway? I'm presuming he's talking about the Walbert Avenue driveway. He states the PC should get that document.
Yes, that's correct. The Walbert Avenue driveway.
That was included with the original submission, the TIS approval. So you have that.
Okay, thank you.
And now the chat box is empty.
Okay. Did we get to, did we answer the Langen questions? You asked, did you get enough input on the waivers? We don't have all the answers right now, but you heard our questions and comments as we went along. I think that's what we can give you. Do you have any more to follow up? The things that you maybe didn't hear, or did you get what you need?
He's muted. Oh, there you go.
Yeah, sorry, I unmuted. I don't know if Jim wants to entertain. I mean, what we were hoping for is a recommendation on the waivers this evening, so we can move to the board.
Yeah, this
Yeah,
is Jim. That is what we were hoping to get this evening.
Well, for one, I'm hesitant to do any kind of vote without comments from the Lehigh Valley Planning Commission.
And I think we still need some additional input before we can give you those answers.
And I think that I will add that on the western side, the cul-de-sacs and the roads, the question of the easement, I think there's a lot still outstanding for us to be able to make educated decisions. I'll bring up again, this land use proposal is, I believe, one of the biggest the Lehigh Valley's seen. It's a development of regional significance. For me, as a planning commission member, I value the input of the Lehigh Valley Planning Commission. I've said that at probably every planning meeting we've had. And it's very helpful to us as a board to have that information in front of us. And I personally am disappointed that we don't have that. So, and I certainly would like to have gone over the public safety comments as well. There's some that we didn't really address tonight as well. So I think there's more work to be done on this very, very significant project before we can make decisions.
I concur, and also, that easement off of Valley Forge is going to be key to how that western part of the project looks. If we can punch through there, then it changes a lot of the waiver requests. So we're not voting on stuff that never comes to fruition. So.
Well, at this point, should we make a motion to table this for further information?
I think that's a good idea.
I'll make that motion.
Okay.
I'll
Before
second.
before we vote to table.
Yep.
Greg, do we have the necessary waivers available and signed?
Time extension?
Time extension?
I have to ask either Jason or Jim if they'll be willing to grant that.
I'll let Jim
I'm
answer
gonna
that.
need-
That's above my pay grade.
Sure, I'm gonna need a minute for that, if you don't mind. And that would be what, a 30-day extension? Is that what we're looking for? Greg?
Well, I mean, our standard is that you'll resubmit a plan within 6 months, and then that with the resubmission of that plan, that restarts the clock.
No, I didn't understand that. We're trying to get an answer on the waivers. It seems the planning commission wants a letter from the Lehigh Valley Planning Commission.
Right.
In order to do that. That can't take 180 days to do that.
No.
No,
Our
they have
standard,
30 days. They have 30 days from when they accepted it. So whenever it was officially paid for or whatever, that's when their clock starts. So
That's what I thought. That's why I was saying, so we're talking a 30-day extension.
well, yes,
I think
but
that's what we're doing, right?
But my question is, after that 30 days extension, are you looking to get a preliminary plan approval out of that? Because if that's not the case, we would need a greater extension for that or another extension once we get there.
Okay, I'm gonna need to talk to my people in-house to get us past this evening. We can do a 30-day extension. I'll give Mr. Zader a call tomorrow morning and we'll work it out from there. But to get us past this point, I believe the 30-day would get you where you need to be for now. Give me the opportunity to talk to my client. Is that?
well, here's the problem. If we give you, even if we voted on the waivers, the clock still ends shortly, right, Greg?
Yes.
The clock's up like.
Well, the deadline for planning commission, which is a soft deadline, is
Today.
Well, my understanding is we get to the board. We're on target to get to the board.
the board has to rule on the whole plan by August 18th.
Everything.
Yes.
Right.
At this point, yes.
We're only trying to get to the board for the waivers because
Exactly.
Jason needs to know whether he needs the answers to these questions so we can develop the plan. That's all we're trying to get to. We're not trying to obviously we're not in any position for a plan approval. Nobody is suggesting that.
Exactly. My point is you can grant us the 30 days, but after the 30 days, we will have to come back for another waiver because until they rule on whether you want preliminary plan approval, the MPC states that we have 90 days to get that. So.
And you'll likely get that and more. I have to talk to my client. I'm just trying to get past 10:15 here on a Thursday night. So if you're up against the deadline, we can do the 30 days right now. I can contact Mr. Zader tomorrow morning and we can work out whatever the rest of that timeline might be. But the 30 days will get us past this evening. And it may be after I talk to Joe tomorrow, whatever we need, whatever we may agree to a different time. But I will have talked to my client between now and then. I'm just trying to get us past this evening.
Okay.
Right. Can I ask you?
Yeah, go ahead, Joe, please.
Just for clarity from my standpoint, Greg, if I understood you, the current time expiration on the plan is some point in mid-August. So
August 18th.
August 18th. So if that's the case, and I hear Mr. Preston giving 30 days, that takes us to mid-September at some point. So there's a breathing space for this to be addressed with the Planning Commission at one more meeting. And what I hear Mr. Preston saying is he understands that the plan is not going to be in a position for any kind of approval or a recommendation even from the Planning Commission, but they need to have a decision on the waivers so they know how to continue with the design of the plan for a resubmission that can't occur until they have those answers. That's what I hear.
That's very well said. Thank you. That's exactly what we're asking for. And then I can, if we give you the 30 days, it's not 30 days from tonight. It's 30 days beyond that August date.
Yeah, that would move it to September 17th,
Sure.
which is fine, because that gives us a planning commission meeting and then 2 board of commissioner meetings. So I'm happy with that.
Right, and that'll give me an opportunity to talk with my client. I don't anticipate any issues, but I have to do that. And then
Okay.
this will get us past this evening. You'll certainly have an LVPC review letter by then, and then Jason can take another look at maybe some of these engineering issues, and we can get back and probably have a more productive discussion then. Okay, and Joe, I'll give you a call tomorrow and we confirm all that up. I'll give it whatever you need in writing as of that time. Okay?
Okay.
And Greg will have the answers to that easement.
Tomorrow
thing.
morning.
Yeah.
I may have to look into that as well. I don't know that those things always survive, even though they appear on a plan.
Understood.
After a certain period of time, they go away. So
it all depends on how it's written.
Yeah, there's some
Case
other
law.
things that go on there. We'll take a look at that.
Okay, thank you.
So we have a motion and a second.
And that was a motion to table.
Take
I
it
think we
under
did.
advisement. Yeah.
Take it under advisement.
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Yes, I
Yes.
think that was Diane and Brian did
Yep.
that. Okay. So take a vote.
Yes.
All in favor?
Oh, David Dunbar,
Aye.
Brian Height,
Aye.
Diane Kelly,
Aye.
Bill McNair,
Aye.
Alan Tope,
Aye.
David Wilson.
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Good night.
Thank you. All right, I think, do we need to do anything with the annual report, Greg? Do we?
Yes.
We have to give it our blessing.
Yes, we need a motion to forward this onto the Board of Commissioners.
So
Is there a
moved.
motion?
Second.
Okay.
Third.
Kelly and Dunbar.
Kelly and Dunbar.
Is everybody in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, that passed unanimously.
Yep.
Any more? I don't think we need to do the transport. Is there anything on the transportation infrastructure update that needs to be done tonight?
I have a short report, but if you choose, we can do that next month. That's up to the pleasure of the board.
Say it real quick.
Unless it's something
Uh,
substantial.
I got 2 minutes. I'll do 2 minutes. All right. The tip was voted on yesterday. There's 5 projects in South Whitehall Township. 3 of the projects are resurfacing of 22, from 78 to 309, from 15th through MacArthur, and from 15th to 309. One project is the 309 in Tillman intersection. That's still on for 2022 construction. So that's looking to move forward. And then the last project is Monchunk signal upgrades. It's at the area of Girard, Jordan, and Perma, I believe, is that unique road. So they're looking 2022, 2023. Looks like they're going to try and redo that, hopefully smooth out that intersection.
Adaptive signals they're looking at.
There you go. Adaptive
They all
signals.
talk to each other, keep traffic flowing.
So that's all I got. Made it quick. So
Great.
any questions I can answer next time.
Okay. Anything about the comprehensive plan?
Yep.
Dave Manhart, you still awake?
Yes. Huh? What? I have a hour presentation I'd like to give on a comp plan update, if that's okay.
No problem.
We get paid the same.
We updated the blog with a kind of presenting the results of the build outs. So just created this story map that kind of talks about the results and presents it in dynamic maps and some text and graphics. So if you haven't checked that out, please check out the blog. swtcompplan.org with 2 P's. That was released, I think, June 22nd. We have our traffic consultant and our land use economist are continuing to work on the economic model and the traffic model. And we are currently preparing the visual preference survey. So we're collecting some photos and kind of cataloging those photos, and that will be forthcoming. That's kind of where we are with the comp plan.
Dave, with the traffic engineer and what they're developing, I don't remember if this was a part of it, but North Whitehall is building 2 warehouses right by Snexville Fire Company, for lack of a better location.
Yeah.
Has that been formulated into that scenario? Because that traffic is ultimately going to be on 309 to 22. So I didn't know if that was part of that or not.
We had mentioned it. Right now we're looking at what intersections we need data for.
Right.
The next piece is to kind of start looking at future flows, traffic flows.
Yeah.
And that is a big one. We had brought it up at one of our meetings, and I've heard it's a lot of trucks.
Yeah, I think it's 1.3 million square feet, and they're moving dirt. So yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
David, I had a comment. I appreciated Todd Poole's presentation that he gave to the joint boards. When we hold our next meeting, he'll be doing another presentation. Did I understand you correctly?
Our next meeting will probably revolve around kind of the visual preference.
Okay.
So we're still kind of figuring out where he won't be tied directly into that piece of it. But we're still working on coming up with an agenda. And depending on where he is with his fiscal impact study, it might be a good opportunity for him to provide an update or at least a baseline of where he is with that project. So I guess the short answer is it's kind of up in the air.
I wanted to make a suggestion, and maybe the other planners can let me know how they feel. I appreciated his presentation, but there are a few times where I felt like he was speaking in very broad terms and not really directed at South Whitehall and the uniqueness of what we have with our school system and stores and that type of thing. Is there a way that we can ask him to tailor it more to our local data so that it's more of our ownership as opposed to
Absolutely. Yep. So this next phase that he's working on is a South Whitehall Township economic model. So he will be looking at schools infrastructure of South Whitehall. And then once we get to the next step of how to grow, we'll have a better idea of what types of development we want, and then he can build that into his future build outs and, you know, future fiscal impacts based on that, those scenarios. So the next piece of his role is very much focused on South Whitehall Township.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Any other question on the comprehensive plan? Anything else from the floor, courtesy of the floor?
Yes. Next month, we're looking at 2 Luther Crest projects. They're doing an independent living apartment expansion. So we'll be seeing that. We'll also be looking at the medical arts building. They're doing a parking lot expansion and actually changing the layout of the water and sewer connections, I believe. So those are the 2 main ones. It appears to me that Ridge Farm may want to be back as well. So that's what we've got on for that agenda. At last night's BOC meeting, the Pasaco height amendment was directed, staff was directed to advertise that for adoption at the 2nd meeting in August, which is the earliest we can get them before the board. Dorney Park Project 2020, which was from last year, was granted a 60-day extension on their deadline to record the plan. We actually have the signed Mylars in from Pidcock, but unfortunately the time was going to run out before we could get that through the process. So we'll take care of that. And Ava Tia came in to the Board of Commissioners with a request for direction on a rezoning request for, you veterans would know it as Hillview Farms, down off Hillview Road in 78 on the south side of 78, small island of South Whitehall down there surrounded by Upper Macungie. He wants to put another retirement facility down there, which requires it to go from R3 to R5 zoning.
Lower Macungie.
Lower Macungie, yes. The board directed staff to take a look at that and give a recommendation back before they would do something more. So staff will be looking at that and probably reporting back to the BOC next week. That's all I got.
Okay. Thank you. Anything else? We'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Have a great evening, everyone.
Greg, you only missed it by an hour and a half. The time.
Okay.
It is.